Um, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Fashion Culture Special Programs at the Museum at MFIT. Tonight, it's our pleasure to have Carla Fernandez here presenting her Mexican Fashion Revolution. Trained as an art historian and as a fashion designer, Carla Fernandez is the founder of Taller Flora, a fashion label and a mobile laboratory that travels throughout Mexico, visiting artisan communities, including those that specialize in handmade textiles. Taller Flora has developed a unique style and is a leader through its business model of a fair trade network and environmental policies that encourage responsible practice in the fashion industry. In 2008, Carla was awarded the Young Fashion Entrepreneur of the Year at London Fashion Week, and we're very privileged to have her here with us tonight. Please do not forget to turn off your cell phones. And at the end of the lecture, we're going to have a question and answer session. So please feel free to use the microphones to ask any questions that you might have. Carla, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here. It's always wonderful to be as a fashion designer in New York. Thank you to FIT, and a special thanks to Tanya, that she has always supported my work, and to the Mexican consulate that brought me here. And I'm going to give you a little background of what I do, and because I think it's very important. Sorry. Oh. Here it is. My personal background, I think it has to do a lot with what I do today. My father used to be a museographer and do like the museums in the indigenous communities in the regional zones. So that happens to be where the indigenous communities live today. So when I was like a little kid, I used to go with him to these places, and I was very aware of what the communities were using. And in the other side, my mother and I was born at Saltillo, Coahuila, that's the north of Mexico, the frontier with the United States, and we all have we always have like this hobby to go shopping to the States. So, so I was also very aware of what they were using, no? And every season I used to go to the malls. And for that, I made the decision to combine these two completely different clothings. And that was like when I was 15 years old. And the people loved it, or sometimes hated it, but I knew that it had something to do, because people used to ask me, what is this, who designer is that? Or I was like, well, this is a designer that is a community, no, called, no sé, chamulas, or called tarahumaras. I was very funny. After that, I wanted to study fashion. And in Mexico, at my time, we didn't have like a university. So I decided to study art history, but do my social service at the Museum of Indigenous Clothing. And there I research and not discovered, because there's people that know, but mostly they are anthropologists. And they saw that mostly the 90% of the clothing are made by squares. And I asked myself, like, it's very strange. Why are these squares, why the typical clothing of Mexico, it's made of squares and rectangles? And if you're interested in fashion, the first thing is to go and say, it's like, well, let's go first study the textile. So I'm going to give you a quick link to how it is made. This is, I'm going to show you an example of the waist loom, of how it's made, the textile, the cloth. First, well, you have to go pick up the cotton. Then you have to take out the seeds, and if you want, you can eat them and toast them, and and then you start like doing long strips. Then, as 3,000 years ago, they used the malacate, that is that beautiful thing, yellow and green that you see, and start spinning the thread. And then you measure you measure with your body the size of the huipil. That means that you don't need anything else than you and it sticks in your body. And then start doing the wrap. And then you take the loom, attach it to a tree or something that is in front of you, and start weaving. Then this is how you start weaving with the sticks, and then you can also brocade. That means that you can do designs inside the textile. And then it's very nice because you can take it everywhere, so if you want to take care of your children or go and talk with your friends or take care of, it always gives you this mobility. No? And obviously, imagine, so that is so complicated that you don't want to cut that textile. This, for example, is how it's an example of how one square can be made of many skirts. No? These are different types of Mexican skirts. We have many more, of how you can wrap it around, or you can play with the fabric. Then you can make a poncho. This is a huipil, that it's a Mexican blouse, or it can be as long as a dress. And it can have like one cloth or many cloths, and then you start going from there, on and on. And I was very surprised because in Mexico, they always tell us that we don't have fashion. And I was like, yes, we do have fashion. We're a country of textiles, and we had incredible people doing textiles, and also we have an incredible way of doing the textiles, that it's unknown or we don't see it, but we can develop this as a fashion language. No? So that's what we are trying to do at Taller Flora. For example, this is our last collection. This is obviously represents the squares. That also one of our big tasks is that in Mexico they think that the huipiles or the square shapes cannot be sexy, no? And we always fight for that. So it's how to do a huipil or a skirt like sexy and trendy. So this is one of our pieces that we like a lot. It's called Barragan, like the architect. And it's the same piece that you can use in many different ways. And it's one rectangle with two rectangles attached like sleeves, and then you can put it on your head and put it like backwards and start playing it. And also we have like the t-shirt. It's a t-shirt that it's called a poncho t-shirt for our huipil t-shirt collection. This is as well a square that obviously if you turn the square, it makes like a rhomboid, a diamond. And then you put just one on top of another one and how you start playing with it. No? And for me, it's very important that in Mexico, in fashion, they used to call us trend followers, and we want to be trendsetters. And how can we be trendsetters if we are not like if we don't do what we know how to do? You know, it's like, how can we compete if we do Italian clothing? But we cannot compete. How can we compete if we do New York fashion? No? Let's do Mexican fashion. And I think we can do very, very trendy things that people are waiting for the Mexican fashion. No? That's why I'm very always really concentrated on how Mexico is good for. And for example, when I started Taller Flora, I could have done two things. One was to have like only be inspired by Mexico, or the second choice was to include the Mexican artisans. And obviously, I went for the second one because we have wonderful, wonderful artisans, and that way we could do the line that we are making now. And this is an example of our charro collection. Also, this is made only by squares. Those are like Indio pants, and they are all embroidered in suede by, the charros are like the Mexican cowboys, and that's like a keshkemitl. Let me show you a detail. And this is, I'm going to show you a video that unfortunately I have to go out, and it's not a good quality video, but to see the complexity of the crafts that we have. First, they draw, and then they make the drawing, and then inside of the in the internal part of the garment, by hand, they start making the design. No, that it's very nice. And obviously, it takes a lot of time. And after that, la 28. Let me see if I can move this. No, one. They take scissors and they start like following the stitches, and it's all made by hand. And like many of the details that we use, our textiles and the details that we use for our fashion, have like this complexity. We also want to be not only like a brand, but we want to be like a cultural embassy for the Mexican textiles, and we are now working with, in the business part, I just recently have a business partner that she's here with me, Cristina Rangel. And every time that you buy some of our pieces, they will come a link to our page that you can see how it is made, because then you understand the complexity of what you are wearing. And obviously, you don't say it's too expensive, because it takes a lot of work. This is made with the same technique. This suit, it's here in the exhibition of Fashion and Politics that I was very pleased that the MFIT bought from us and for their collection. And I wanted to also demonstrate with this collection, this is the charro collection, how like the charros are meant to be suits for man, and how you can be as well very, not this transgression of being a woman dressed like a man, and also like the revolution part of the adelitas, las carretilleras, where you put the bullets on. So this is like our design concept of how from squares and rectangles you can make many complicated pieces, and the importance of that is like pieces like as complicated as this or as simple as this one. But let me go to this one. The importance of doing squares and rectangles is very simple, because when I first went to the communities, they told me that I have to teach them how to do Western clothing, so to make like very tight and fitted to the body. And it's impossible, because you go there and you see that they measure with fingers, and then they don't understand centimeters, they don't know how to do curves. So what I decided is that first I had to learn to after teach. And if we use the methods that they are familiar with, obviously the results were completely different. So this is our vision, this is our nuestra visión de empresa. And everything starts with the fair trade and the social responsibility. And then we have, sorry that is in Spanish, I completely forgot. We have the demi-couture and the ready-to-wear, and then going to the showcases. This is what I told you, that to teach first we have to learn. And I suppose that we go to a place and tell people, it's like, okay, tell me what you do. And they, mostly all of the women do their clothing. So they know perfectly how to fold a skirt, how to put one square together with another square, no? And then make a sweater or make like a shawl or, and I present them and tell them, and we make like, I tell them, it's like, look how they did this in, no, not far from here, or in Yucatan, or no, and we see like how they do the clothing, and they completely understand it because they know perfectly how to use this method. No, it's like down here, it's like how to make a coat for the children, and it's just very simple with the sleeves like squares, and also always thinking about how to solve problems in the community. And also something that is very important from me, and it's very difficult because the artisans, they don't get paid for their ideas, and the designers do. And I think that it's very difficult because a designer can make an idea and then get a lot of money, but the artisan, especially in Mexico, they have to work sometimes even for a year to make one garment, and then who pays for that, no? While the designer is getting paid for their ideas. So that's for me a little unfair because they are never going to reach the economic money as much as the designer. So how are we going to do that? And especially in Mexico, our textile crafts, it's run by women. And women usually have 8 kids and have to take care of traditions, of the house, of many, many things. And at the end of the day is how they do their work. So how in the world are they going to, if you ask them for $20 in a month, for sure they will end giving you 3 or 4 because they have many other things. So that is part of what we are planning to do, is how to put together, let me go a little bit further, how to put together the artisans and the industry. So what we are planning to do is to have the two different lines. One is the demi-couture that will preserve the traditions and also will have, it's very our high-end fashion, our demi-couture, no? And modernize, to do our fashion, our ethical and our workshops, no? That's the one that sustains the traditions. And this, for example, is 2 co-ops, one that has made the textile, that is called the Rebosos, and then another co-op that makes the embroidery on top of it. So you also try to give work and between them to buy from one co-op to another co-op. We play also with the colors, and these, for example, will be our ready-to-wear. That is where the women and our label will get the money and will adapt to the fashion system, because now, as you know, fashion goes very fast and it needs changes so fast that if you work with artisans, sometimes it takes you more than a year to get a prototype. And how you will fight against the times of fashion. Obviously, you can't, no? So what we do is to have these two lines, our ready-to-wear, that are some pieces that we can make industrially, and then some others that is to help some of the parts of the embroidery. I suppose one of the problems that we have a lot is that people see one prototype, but then the other one is not the same. And buyers get very frustrated. So how can we, I don't know why it's moving, but, so how can we increase our sales? And it's like, for example, here you can make like a drawing and then a silk screen, and then you print it, and on top of that, the girls will embroider. And someone can tell me, it's like, oh, but what happens with the drawer? The drawer in the community, he makes it one time, and then the ladies buy a copy, and they trace it on top. So the drawer gets like 20 pesos for one drawing, and then they copy and copy it and copy it again. So what we say is like, why don't we make these and give also to the drawer or the community of the co-op money for the compensation of the draw. So he will even win more than making one drawing. You know? And also we are doing now like t-shirts with these prints that you can choose between one and another one. Obviously from these dresses, you can have like 200 made a month, and from the t-shirts you can have 100,000. And also to give compensation to the community and the co-op that is working with you for that design. No, it's like this. And then we have, this is, for example, an exhibition we did in Mexico of 4 different works that is like chamula wool, that it's all made by hand. And then that's a piece that I made with an artist, no, based also like in a very geometrical shapes. This is from Yucatan, and that's the charros. I just wanted to show you that because that's the, we also move a lot to our pedagogy, that we give workshops, and this is, you can make your own clothing with our method, and it's open. No? So let me just go back a little bit. This is an example how I am very interested as well of if you go to a community and you see like an immediate problem, no? For example, here, that the kids in San Juan Chamula, they don't use the traditional clothing as well, and it's the highlands in Mexico. And it's very, very cold, so they are always sick. And obviously the mothers have like many things to do. And there's like an overdose of dolls made by a lot of artisans that they do the same. So how can we help to open the market, and at the same time to focus to solve a problem? So we decided to do like the enfermedades, diseases that most affect the Mexicans. It was like 2 years ago, it's not because of the swine flu. And also it's very important to us that the artisans are part of the creative. It's not that I go because I am the designer and tell them what to do. It's very, very important that they are part of the creative terms, no, of the creativity. So this is, for example, I gave this lady to choose one of the diseases. She chose the influenza, and then everyone chose their own sickness, and then they design their own dolls. No? So that's an example of how we work. It's not that we always like tell them, oh, you have to do a monster that is yellow and blue, and no. So they also give us their feedback. And well, that's what we know as that's what we stand for. And I don't know if you would like to make some questions. Also, Christine is here to answer the business part that is quite complex. And thank you.
How many people are working in your company, in the taller, directly?
Well, in the city, we are 5 people. It's a very small workshop. And in the communities, it depends. It's like this one here that we are doing in 2 different co-ops, the embroideries that we're making in Tenango de Doria. There are 3 different co-ops, and there are 120 women. And the rebozo, that is the textile, it's another co-op that there are like around 30 people.
What sorts of dyes do you use for after you've woven the cotton?
Well, we have worked with natural dyes, and it depends on the community. We have done with Marta Turok that we have here in Oaxaca natural dyes, like indigo, and in also caracol púrpura. And but it's very difficult for us to, like, the rebozos are not done with natural dyes because it's a super complex process per se, that if we would do the rebozos and in natural dyes, it would be crazy. So, but in the places that we have the co-ops that work usually with those dyes, we continue the use of them.
What kind of distribution do you have? Where are your designs sold? Just Mexico City, or what's the story?
No, pues that one. You want to answer that one?
Right now we're going through expansion process. Right now we're only selling in a couple of boutiques, one in LA, another one in Japan, and in some in Mexico City. But we're planning to come in January to try to sell our fall collection for 2010 here in New York City and in LA and many other, I hope, many other trade shows in the world, hopefully. London, yes.
Where in London? It's called B. I have to tell you, it's B store? No, it's just a label. Just a label. Just a label. Yeah.
Hi. Was it difficult to approach these women, and what was their answer? Like when you arrived there and asked them, I would like to work with you, and because I guess for them it's like a completely different world, this fashion world, or how was the first time you got there?
Because I had like the luck that the Mexican government asked me to do so, and the communities have asked the government for help. So it's very difficult when you work with a co-op that asks you to come and help them because they are not selling their things, that you arrive there and tell them, I want to do things with you. So usually I work with artisans that ask for our help, because otherwise it's very difficult, but it helps a lot that they're asking you, because in Mexico one of the problems of the crafts is that there's a lot of communities that do the same craft. And so if you have one craft, you are not going to buy the same craft. And we consume a lot, Mexicans consume a lot of crafts, and you don't replicate your, no? So that's how we work with the communities. And it's, I mean, I have to say, obviously it's always difficult, but you find your way, and at the end, it's like when you do a team. You stick with the people that you feel comfortable, and they feel comfortable with you, and then you start like having these persons that run their part in the community, and you run your part in Mexico, and yes. This one is not made of squares, but those are, like Christina's pants and Tanya's. Yes, because also it's like, this is like, we have tailors in charros, son sastres. And I wanted also to work with the sastres charros because they are like the Mexican dandies and they dress beautifully. And also I think that's a very important part of our work, that we have a workshop, and in that workshop we're 4 Mexicans, but there's one English tailor working with us, and there used to be another English girl, designer, and a French girl. Because I have always thought that we have to make a team. It's like, if the best tailors are, for many, many reasons, like not the English ones, because I love the way they dress, or because of the French know this beautiful embroidery, and the Americans have this vision for business, it's like, let's make a super team. No? And in Mexico, it's very difficult because they always tell you that you have to do it alone, that you have to be the business part and then to be the designer, and that is not only for us, it's for the same people in the community. They tell you, you have to embroider, you have to cut, you have to go and sell, and I am against that, because you can be good in one thing, but it's very difficult that you are good in many others, in all of these things, no?
I have a house in San Miguel de Allende, and I find it very interesting down there. Of course, there are a lot of Americans and Canadians, and so they're very supportive of the Mexican people. But there's one group there that I just found fascinating, and I was lucky enough to go out to their ranchero, and it's a group of women, it's a co-op, and every woman, they by donations, they are given wool, blocks of wool, it could be anything. They strip all of these up into pieces, and they design their own designs, and they're free to do whatever they want, into little tapetas, little rugs, or bigger rugs, and you can buy those and then make them into pillows, and every single one of them is charming and very individual, and then the women sign them, you get their signature, and then they're paid. There is a woman who manages everybody, and then every woman if you buy their pillow, they get a certain percentage of that, plus, I guess, being paid for, generally working. And it's marvelous, and where they do most of their selling is in the craft shows.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
and so give us their names.
I can tell, I mean, I don't have it with
Please.
me, but I will email it to you because it's fascinating. And there are a group of women, Americans, that really started this whole group with these women.
Yes, we want to sell in San Miguel de Allende. We had a show once there, a fashion show, and we started selling, but we need to go and make like a good market research there.
In the Instituto de Allende, they have, of course, not all the time, but they have these big craft shows on the weekends. Yes. And that's a wonderful venue for a lot of the artisans there. And all of them are Mexican.
Yes.
But that's where they do a lot of their selling. But I was lucky enough to go out and into the ranchero and meet all of them. And they're not that expensive. I mean, they're probably 500 pesos maybe or less for.
Also, one of the things that we are doing with Cristina, and it's our big project, is to have like very specifications of how are we going to work with the co-ops, no? How much are they, what is a fair trade, because also it's difficult if you manage a very high fair trade, because then you cannot give to all the people work, so you have to be very careful that it's a fair trade, but you are not gonna make an imbalance in the whole community. And so all that, we've been really like studying how we can do it, that we are not going to make a mess in the community, that this is for the benefit for all of us, no? For the team in the community, for the team in Mexico, for the design, for the crafts. So we are being very, very careful. And Cristina is así, like, she has like also this vision of laws, you know, and also how we're going to do that. Because I really think that in Mexico, a lot of the we do a lot of things by word. And we have to start getting things in paper, you know? It's like, okay, this is the date, who's the responsible? Because otherwise, this won't change. Let's see if that works. I don't know, Marta. What do you think?
I'm wondering, hi, if you could talk a little bit about the chamulas, the chamula work that you do, and the wool is phenomenal, and I understand it takes a very long time to produce. And my major question is, are you continuously having people produce this in a co-op, or is it like special order only? Somebody has to place the order. And also, do any people currently still use that material as clothing because of its difficulty and its expense, I'm sure. So could you just talk a little bit more about that fabric,
Yes.
that cloth?
Well, I think it's also it's important to say that I use like traditional textiles, the ones that you don't see in the market that often, because one thing is what you see in the market and one thing is what they wear, you know? And my eye always catches what they wear, and it's so precious. And it's like the case of the chamula skirts, no, enredos. These chamula skirts are made in waist loom, and then they're dyed in moth, and then they like have the hairs made with this. They stretch their feet, no, así like scratch to have the hairy texture. And they certainly use it, and it's a fashion. As much hair they have, it's more expensive. And in the San Juan Chamula and the highlands in Chiapas, it's very, very cold. So, and what I do, well, I have a friend of mine, Angelina, that lives in Chiapas, and she's an artisan at Chamula. And I always like, they take like 2 months to make one, 2 to 3 months. And they're very expensive, very, very expensive. We just send some to Japan because the Japanese love the chamula wool. And yes, we buy from them. It's a family. And it's the mother usually the one that makes. And if they don't have, they ask to other members of the family. And
So are they producing pieces like the squares and rectangles, or
no, I buy the skirt from them. I buy the skirt. Yes, because it's very difficult to change the measurements. So I think so it's so difficult to change something that it's better to focus maybe to change the color, no, not to change the size. It's better from us. So what we do is to cut the fabric, and if we have like a piece, then we do belts. So then it's better for us to figure how we can do what the fabric, instead of changing everything and make it, because the day after tomorrow we're not going to use long skirts, we're going to use short skirts, and then to start pushing that, I prefer that we push that effort to things that are more evident, that things that we cannot solve in Mexico.
So when you buy these skirts, you buy them in whatever sizes they happen to obey.
Es que they usually have the same size, because the waist loom is like how you can pass your arm, so they usually have the same size. But yes, we get crazy all the time, because we cannot make a pattern like the rebosos. They always come in different sizes, and we cannot have like one pattern, and we always have to go bigger, and then, no? But that's our work. That's our demi-couture.
I want wanted to ask you if you also make, other than clothing, accessories, scarves, home decor, pillowcases,
We have
tabletop,
one
any of
scarf.
these things?
Yes. We have belts, bags, and scarves. And we're starting to do shoes. But that will come later because that's too much. See, yes, we do. We have to, because people ask us, and that's what also sustains like the brand, the rebosos, the shawls. I think, Cristina, you have one shawl, no? This is like a traditional rebozo. And this is like the embroidery, no? Well, so this is made by hand, and then you see. Well, this was supposed to be a dress, but now we made it into a shawl.
This is silk screen, so that the women can see where they have to embroider, which makes it so much easier for us to have quality control in that sense, so that we can make the same piece several times.
And we do the designs with the community. So we sit together with them. It's like with the charros, and we decide the drawing.
Can I ask you how much something like that would be and how many hours work it is?
Yes, of course. Well, if you count only the rebozo, well, the rebozo is like a very long process. And it takes like a month from the beginning to end, because you have to wait, and then you have to make the cut that is painted by hand. And you have to then weave, and it's very complex. And then, also like a whole production is like 21 days. Obviously they make more than one rebozo, but that's as long as it takes. And then the embroidery takes like 4 weeks, but you have to think that it's not the only thing that they are doing. No, they do other things. And we sell that in-house for $400. How much? No, like como 350.
Like
50. Yes, $350.
And are these indigenous motifs, or do you bring your motif to them, or do you create them together?
What I like to do is that we see it and we do it. So it's like the dresses for the girls. So these are like traditional. These monsters, these are like the monsters of Tenango. Oh. Well, I call them monsters, but they are like fantastic animals. These ones are like traditional drawings, but made like duplicated, and then made it more stylish. But the designer that went there, she went with me 7 times to the community, and we sat and we designed, and we were in touch with the women that was a drawer in the community. Excuse me? Yes. Sí, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, for me it's very, very important that creativity is involved, because otherwise then we will not compete with the super designers all around the world. We have to compete with our great designers.
How many communities are you committed with, and like how many states in Mexico have you covered so far?
Pues I have very good touch, o sea, that's also with these 2, that is Tenango and Rebosos, with the Charros and with Chamula, that we constantly are having done work there. And there's also another in Oaxaca, another co-op that we just made a big order for Japan, that they make cotton textiles. And we also, what we do is that we have like parallel collections, because otherwise we'll be giving like a charro collection and then stop giving the charros work and then moving to chamula, and then it wouldn't work. So we are running like the whole collections all the time. So it's like rebozos, pues the rebozos come with a charro and embroidery, and you always have to find out how you can give work to all the co-ops.
And I think if you can explain to them garments, for example, like the barragan that you designed a long time ago and keeps on coming back, you have an example there. But I think it's an interesting example of the way you have worked throughout the years.
Yes, also because we have to have our basic garments that are quite complex. Está al principio, sí. And it's like the barragans that you saw, or the ponchos, or we move like the colors and the textures and the applications, and then it's a piece that we make it bigger or smaller, or sometimes we add like another two sleeves, and we have to be playful because otherwise I'm always sorry to say this, but we have to find ourselves and be like very successful in design-wise, because we need to compete with monsters. We need to compete with a lot of people that have schools and many other things, and we have to be very creative and see how we can move with the fashion system, no? Please.
Me. Can you foresee a time when you would be mass producing to bring the cost down so that they're not so expensive?
I think to a certain extent we could to a certain extent we could in the ready-to-wear collection. We can mass produce that, but you can never mass produce something that might take, like the chamula wool, how long does it take? Like 3 weeks just to do one. So there's really not enough labor or time for these women to produce this. So to a certain extent, or to some pieces we could mass produce, but others are never going to stop being handcrafted or never going to take less time than they do now, because that would mean that we would have to get all the women in one community to do only that, and that would mean to stop feeding their children, to stop taking care of the children, to stop, working the field. So some pieces we can, and hopefully that's what we're doing now. We're trying to get this ready-to-wear collection mass-produced so that we can have that line. But there will always be this handcraft part of our collection. That's what it makes it unique to also, and that's what also sells to some extent.
And that is very important. What Cristina is saying. We don't want to change what the women are doing now. So I don't want to change that they are like out of the city or they come to produce here. So what for? No, because a lot of people have tried, and I think it's better that we go with what they want to do.
But then you limit your market.
No, because we are going to have like the pret-a-porter line. No, we're going to have the two lines. One that is going to be very exquisite, that the ones that we do directly handmade with the artisans, and then the other one that we go and have a workshop with them, and then we decide the designs, and from that we produce like a design collection, and we help them.
I want to give you one example. For example, the rebozos are usually made one piece by one piece. I mean, they make it in a whole roll, sort of, and they make the mill, not the mill, but the weaver, or ¿cómo se dice? El telar, well, no, I don't know what the word is. It keeps going, but they leave, for example, they leave a lot of space for the fringes of each rebozo. And so we're asking them to not leave that space and continue the work so that we don't lose, that we can maybe put another pattern into that space. And so we can get them to do that, but there's always limitations because they dye their rebosos by hand, so they need a little space to hold the reboso while they put it into the ink. So there's limitations like this, and we can work around certain things. But as what you were saying, that it limits our market, I also think that we can use it as an opportunity. Some people will like that we're using these type of processes, and that would also expand our market to people that are looking for unique pieces that are handcrafted in Mexico, you know? So I think that's...
Mexican crafts, and especially Mexican textile crafts, are world famous. They're really extraordinary. But surely you're not the only fashion people who've thought of collaborating with artisans. How is your organization different than that of other designers who work with artisan co-ops?
Well, I think it's different because we work with, you mean with Mexican co-ops, or? No, I think there's not that many people working, like making fashion, because certainly there are a lot of co-ops making crafts. And fashion, we are like around 5 people or 7 people, not that much. And I think we're different because of, we don't ask them to produce our ideas. We sit with them and we produce together. And we sit with them and see what they need, you know? And I think that's mainly our thing. And also something very important is we have a pedagogy. So we use their methods. I use squares and I use rectangles, and it's not that I go there and teach them how to cut with scissors. I go with them and tell them, this is what you know how to do. Let's go and see how they do it in the different regions and expand what you already know. That's how I think that's our difference.
Well, thank you very much for coming here
Thank
tonight.
you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Thank you. Thank you very much.